It's always a great pleasure to come your way at lunchtime with business. Now, the details. The World Bank is proposing an extensive training in entrepreneurship in digital programs for citizens in the sub-Saharan Africa, including Ghana. According to the bank, the measure will reduce the cost of having a digital economy, which is likely to be a burden on many developing countries. World Bank Chief Economist for Africa, Albert Zofak, also believes this could reduce the high unemployment rate in the country. Here's a report.
According to the World Bank, the impact of external shocks on African countries can be resolved by a digital revolution. World Bank Chief Economist for Africa, Albert Zofak, says digital transformation can increase growth by nearly 2 percentage points annually and reduce poverty in sub-Saharan Africa alone. He therefore called for a rapid development in broadband deployment, as it is the next game changer for Africa.
The type of skills that would be useful for the youth in the future would have to include a hefty dose of digital skills. So those skills need to be taught in school, right from primary up to tertiary education. Another very important aspect of the digital economy that we are emphasizing is digital entrepreneurship. And that's why we see the digital as actually source of jobs for the African youth.
In its Pulse report, the World Bank also made a strong case for digital skills to be part of government's job creation agenda, as well as implementing programs that will improve electronic transactions for the state.
Countries should invest in digital platforms. And investing in digital platforms, including those that allow the government to function better and provide better services, would all contribute to higher growth in the future and therefore reducing that overall cost of embracing the digital economy.
Ghana has been making some strides in its digital transition, making the country play a leading role in embracing a digital economy. Eslo Usu-Ekufo is Minister for Communication.
Since 2005 or so, we have been embarking on e-governance initiatives in this country. His Excellency the President was clear in his mind that digitalization was one of the tools with which we could formalize our economy.
Meanwhile, after recording a slow growth for 2018, the World Bank says Ghana's economy is expected to pick up strongly on the back of agriculture and oil and gas production. This forms part of the World Bank's Pulse report released to the media this morning. This report.
The World Bank is projecting a strong growth rate of 7.6%, a marginally high rate from the projected rate of 7.2% by government. According to the World Bank, Ghana will be recording a rebound in agricultural growth due to the policy initiatives introduced by the government to boost food production. Senior economist at the World Bank Ghana office, Kwabena Jan Kwache, explains further.
Since we are coming from a very high growth, of oil growth in 2017, coming into 2018, it was smoothing out. But then oil production will also pick up in 2019. And then apart from oil production, we also expect higher non-oil growth, especially when government policies on agriculture are actually going to be felt much in 2019. So we are projecting 7.6 for 2019.
The rate of growth for 2018, according to the bank, has been slow as compared to the rate in 2017. Meanwhile, the economic team of the African Pulse report has been advising governments in sub-Saharan Africa to take a critical look at growth in the industrial sector.
It requires macro stability, it requires lower inflation, healthy fiscal balances, and a debt profile that is not risky. It requires also a policy environment that encourages investment by private sector. And at the same time, given the persistent nature of fragility, the development actors that are involved in the transition out of fragility, they have to know that they are there for the long haul. They need to commit into a long-term engagement because they need to avoid that there's a relapse in fragility, and they need to be patient enough to seize those windows of opportunity that present so that they can build momentum towards that exit.
Growth for sub-Saharan Africa is, however, projected at 2.8% in 2019. Ebenezer Sabutis report for Joy Business.
And we would like to interrogate the figures further on the marketplace. We've got economist Courage Marty on phone to give us his views about these current, figures put out by the World Bank. Now, Courage, the World Bank's figures is almost equal to the government of Ghana's figures. Now, we see that before the World Bank is projecting 2.3 for sub-Saharan African countries, but is projecting a high figure for Ghana. What's your take on this?
Well, thanks for having me. I think the low figure for sub-Saharan Africa, the average low figure for sub-Saharan Africa is as a result of the big economies like Nigeria and South Africa and partly Angola, who are still struggling to hit their potential growth momentum. And as a result, they are exerting a downward pressure on the average growth for the sub-region. But when you come to Ghana, we appear to be running towards our potential level because of the recovery we've experienced in not just the oil sector, but the non-oil sector. And specifically speaking to last year's third quarter growth numbers, we noticed that whilst overall growth for third quarter was 7.4%, the non-oil sector grew by 8.5%. And for 2019, the expectation is that non-oil sector of the economy will propel growth above 7%.
All right. Now, so what does it mean for the economy at this time, and what will be the outlook, even as the IMF is getting ready to also put out its figures at the World Economic Forum?
Well, it can only meet good fortunes, especially if this will be sustained in the years ahead. And it is good because if you recall, in 2017, we grew by 8% overall, but a lot of it was oil-driven. And the bulk of labor and the bulk of the domestic economy is non-oil. Over 90% of the domestic economy is non-oil. So if you are growing 8% led by oil, then that growth is not inclusive, meaning a lot of people do not share in that benefit. But now, the growth momentum is to be driven by non-oil sector. And so if you have over 90% of the economy dragging the growth upwards, then growth is more likely to be inclusive and shared by most, if not all. Now, if it is sustained, the benefit is even greater in the long run.
Now, with more exploration and production of oil on our oil fields or offshore, do you think that this projected figure could even soar up in the future?
Oh, yes, it could even go up in the future, holding other factors constant, because we do not operate in isolation. I mean, the global economy is not really looking very robust, and so aggregate demand for output out there could wobble if the weaknesses persist. But then looking just within, if you consider the oil exploration plans that is being submitted by, say, Aker Energy, for instance, who have submitted some $4 billion or $4.4 billion development plan, that bodes well for hydrocarbon, oil and gas to add on top of the non-oil improvements that we are seeing. So just holding the external sectors constant and looking at the domestic factors, then it's very good for our outlook as well.
Finally, what do you think the IMF's figure is going to be like?
Well, I do not expect a sharp negative deviation. I think that generally the forecasts are pointing to something above 7%. So I would also expect a similar robust expectation or projections from the IMF, a growth number that will look ahead or above 7% even from the IMF, because it appears that's what a lot of the forecast, even our in-house forecast, is pointing towards. So I would expect the IMF forecast to also give us some strong numbers for 2019.
Many thanks for your time. Courage Marty is an economist with Data Bank. Meanwhile, the IMF says it sees the global economy slowing and is urging leaders around the world to handle this delicate moment with care. Ahead of the launch of the World Economic Outlook Forum on Tuesday, the fund's chief economist, Gita Gopinath, says the IMF is projecting weaker growth for 70% of the global economy, but expects a recovery in 2020.
The global expansion continues to weaken. For 70% of the global economy, we are projecting slower growth in 2019 relative to 2018. We expect a recovery in 2020, but because of important downside risks, this recovery is precarious. Now, one of the most important downside risks relates to trade policy. While there has been an improvement with trade talks between the US and China, we are still concerned that trade tensions may escalate and they may expand to other sectors like the auto sector, which can have very damaging impact on the global economy. It's important for policymakers to keep in mind that this is a delicate moment for the global economy, which means that do no harm, work cooperatively to reduce the heightened levels of policy uncertainty in the world, especially with trade tensions, to make sure that fiscal policy balances the needs of growth while making sure debt is sustainable and macroprudential risks are managed.
Well, so our man George Wiafe is currently in Washington, D.C., attending the World Economic Forum, and of course, will be updating us and bringing us up to speed with developments at the forum, and we'll definitely update you as and when we get through to him. But back here in Accra, Amenfiman Rural Bank is investing part of profit margins in developing capacity of its personnel. This is in response to government's plan to extend new banking regulations to the rural banks. Chief Executive Officer of the bank, Dr. Alexander Asma, reveals the bank has made adequate preparation to withstand any possible shocks. He spoke to Love Business at the launch of the bank's Talent Academy program for this year. Nana Yaojima has more.
The ARB Apex Bank in October 2018 revealed about 47 rural banks were yet to meet the new capital benchmark of 1 million cedis. Affected banks were advised to find ways to meet the new benchmark, which include merging with others. Dr. Asma reveals earlier reforms in the top tier of banking gave the bank some time to position itself for the impending reforms.
So we are highly expecting new regulations to come to the rural banking industry. We have quite prepared ourselves towards that. Years before this regulations or this reform started, we have been talking about the need to raise our capital level. We set our own objectives to raise our capital, which is very much on course. And in addition to that, we are also looking at how best we can build capacities for people to manage the resources of customers and clients that are under our care. So in all these things, the biggest thing we have seen through is corporate governance. I mean, how leadership is managing customers' resources that have been entrusted.
The bank has rolled out a 5-year strategic plan aimed at ensuring sustainable growth, with human resource central to its achievement. Anthony Edubruni is head of human resource and administration at the bank.
Employees are employees who are productive. So beyond the boundary, even though we haven't bonded any one of them, the strategy of getting them engaged would prove very effective. We are doing this based on the results that we had after the graduation of the first batch of 8 tappers. We sat down and did the evaluation, identified the mistakes and the loopholes that bedeviled the first batch.
Meanwhile, for 1 year, about 22 staff of the bank will enroll in the program designed and facilitated by China European International Business School. The bank will fully sponsor the program for the period. Executive Director for SIPS Africa, Professor Matthew Chamenyi, explains how the program will impact staff and the banking sector as a whole.
For every organization, it is essential that they invest in their people, because at the end of the day, to compete, especially in today's dynamic and very innovative world, you need people. You need to develop people, develop their skills, develop their talents. So that's what I was quite impressed with the management with taking this initiative and decision.
Nana Yaojima reporting.
Let's all stay within the Ashanti region, because over 100 locations in the region out of 625 nationwide are targeted to benefit from mobile telecoms giant MTN's internet service upgrade. It is part of the company's $160 million investment in technology deployment following installation of 4.5G for improved coverage. These were revealed when MTN engaged its customers at a soiree in Kumasi. Nana Yaojima again reports.
An amount of $144 million was invested last year for network improvements. Besides upgrading from 4G to 4.5G internet service, introduction of a wireless internet box for homes is being piloted with over 7,000 boxes sold so far. Chief Executive Officer for MTN, Selom Adadevo, gives details of the investment.
This year we're investing $160 million in technology infrastructure. This includes sites, this includes fiber networks so that you can have faster speeds where you are at your offices, in your homes. This includes technology on phones, on devices, so you can enjoy specific services, IT systems, databases. A lot of infrastructure that we're implementing this year for $160 million. As part of our 4G campaign, we launched a product called TurboNet. I'm sure some of you have heard of TurboNet. Now we've launched that product as a pilot, which allows you to have a wireless box for internet at home. In the past, we had to dig fiber in the ground all the way to people's doorsteps. Today, you can pick up a box in our office, you can plug it in at home, no fiber, but you can enjoy the speeds of a fiber network on our TurboNet.
MTN customers are at the center of the company's activities this year, as depicted at the event where some of them received awards. Jemima Kote Walsh is Customer Relations Executive.
We see our customers as our partners, and they're very important stakeholders. So they keep us in business. So it's really right, to take time out to do this, to say thank you and to appreciate and celebrate them as well for giving us business, because as I said earlier, without them we wouldn't be here. So that's the essence of it.
Nana Ojima reporting.
Back in Accra, about 40 small and medium-scale enterprises have been selected by the Ghana Export Promotion Authority to partake in the Maiden Trade for Sustainable Development Hub program. Speaking at the launch of the program, Deputy Trade Minister Carlos Ahinkra assured of government's full support for SMEs that engage in exports. There's more in this report.
As Ghana races to become an export-led economy in the medium to long term, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, is engaging SMEs and local manufacturing firms on best ways to increasing output and meeting international standards. The launch of the Trade for Sustainable Development Hub is to build the capacity and knowledge of SMEs to implement green business practices. Here's Deputy Trade Minister Carlos Ahinkra.
When women get to put their minds to doing things, it becomes very sustainable. And I believe there's a challenge to these days business community to ensure that we have more women in entrepreneurship.
Meanwhile, team lead for the Ghana project, Ebenezer Kumi, has been explaining to Joy Business what this means.
You would have improved on your green business practices. You would have become more eco-friendly and more leaning towards green. So you would have integrated key sustainability practices into your operation. And this ultimately is supposed to give you markets and also help you to access finance and improve on your innovation.
GEPA will receive comprehensive support from the United Nations on this program, which will last 24 months.
Now, a father used what he felt was fear of potential intertribal marriage as an excuse to force his daughter to drop out of school. That was the time she had gained admission to Wesley Girls High School in Cape Coast. Could it be a genuine and reasonable concern or just a cover-up for financial difficulties? Whatever it was, a determined Janet Abobiga looked elsewhere in a bid to salvage the family from poverty. Today, she's credited with the establishment of one of the biggest clothing entities in Ghana. Her story is one of several to be told at the upcoming Love FM's Women and Business Fair in Kumasi. Here's more.
Janet moved from the drudgery of working as a porter in the central business district of Kumasi to frying and selling of groundnuts. In the junior high school, she completed her basic education. Her former teacher advised her to learn a trade in dressmaking. By dint of hard work, Janet now owns one of the biggest dressmaking factories in the country, UniJ Fashions. Mrs. Abobiga recounts how she supported herself throughout the period of learning a trade.
Wow.
She says, at the point I decided to learn dressmaking, I had already gathered some money, so my father took me to a seamstress to pay for me to start. He kept part of the money and gave me the rest. I used that money to start a small orange business in the evening. I fed myself with the profit I made from the business, and through that, I survived. Today, she employs over 200 people directly and several others indirectly. UNIJ supplies uniforms for almost all senior high schools in the Ashanti region and beyond. It has become a haven for women who share similar experiences. Another interesting story is that of Paulina Asemtin Jima, who proceeded from District Treasury Typist to the Ashanti Regional Accountant of the Ghana Highway Authority. She emphasizes hard work as key in climbing the ladder.
From typist, I wrote O level, so they changed me as accounts clerk.
Okay.
So from the accounts clerk to grade 3 and senior accounts clerk.
Wow.
Then after the HND, they promoted me to accountant.
Were you brilliant in school? Your record sounds like you were sharp baby like that.
It's one man who identified that. He told me, if I've completed Form 4 and I'm yet in this situation, able to write exams with people who have completed secondary school Form 5, and I've done better than them.
Breaking barriers to become a member of parliament and later a deputy minister in a male-dominated environment could be a Herculean task, especially for Ghanaian women. An overcomer, Elizabeth Ajeman, is now deputy minister for Ashanti region.
Women, if you want to become somebody like an MP or something, you pass through a lot. Men are always chasing us. They are still chasing some of the women in parliament. They will tell you, oh, this woman, different kind of stories, something you don't even think about. They will tell you that you have done that, you have done this, you have done, which is not true. It's just that they don't want you to be the MP. Women are always wrong, but if you insist and you want to do what you want to do, you can do it.
From Friday 12th and 14th of April, women in all fields of endeavor will converge at the Kumasi City Mall to share more of such stories. This will happen amid exhibition of products and services, mentor each other and network for business growth. Young female entrepreneurs will also be given the opportunity to exhibit their wares and receive the necessary advice in business. As a prelude, women guests will be hosting various programs on Love FM.
And that will be it for the marketplace today. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We have a good afternoon.